So again, I just want to welcome you guys to the I-9 and E-Verify training put on by LeBaron and Carroll Safety and Risk and also LNHR Consulting. Let's go ahead and just jump right in. The I-9 form verifies the identity and employment authorization of individuals hired for employment in the United States, and it is a required form for all new employees across any state in the United States. The form is on the right-hand side of the screen, so you can kind of follow along as we talk about each section. E-Verify, on the other hand, is the online system used by the government that allows employers to confirm the employment eligibility of their employees by comparing the information from the I-9 form against records in governmental databases such as Security Administration and Homeland Security. Understanding I-9 requirements, the employee information and attestation. This is section 1 in the form, and it has to be completed by the employee, signed and dated no later than the first day of employment. And as an employer, you want to ensure that the employee provides their full legal name, address, date of birth, and social security number, and attests their employment status. As the employer, you need to review and verify this information. So you look at the documents presented by the employee to establish their identity and employment authorization. Acceptable documents are listed on the I-9 form. I believe it's on the back. Excuse me. And so that should be presented to the employee prior to their first day so that they can be sure and bring that information back. Then step number 2 is this must be completed within 3 business days of the employee's first date of employment. And the employer should fill out section 2 with the appropriate document information, the document type, the issuing authority, the document number, and expiration date if applicable. Section 3 is a re-verification and rehire section, and this section is used if the employee's employment authorization or documentation has expired, or if the employee is rehired within 3 years of their original completion date. When you're looking at and reviewing the acceptable documents, there's 3 lists. There's list A, B, and C. List A are documents that establish both identity and employment authorization, such as a U.S. passport or card or permanent card. And there's other options under list A, but those are the 3 that are most used. List B are documents that establish identity. It could be a state-issued ID card, a driver's license, a student ID card, something of that nature. It does have to have a picture on it. And the picture needs to match the employee. List C are documents that establish employment authorization, such as social security card, birth certificate, something of that nature. And employees must provide either one document from list A or one document from list B and one document from list C. So as an example, if an employee presents a passport, then you just complete that information in section 2 of the I-9 form and you're done. If they present a driver's license, then they will also need to present something from list C, whether it's a social security card or a birth certificate or something along those lines, whatever on the listing. And then step 4 is if you run into any issues where you need to make corrections, they must be corrected in a manner that maintains the integrity of the document. So crossing out the incorrect information, entering correct information, and initialing the change. Do not erase or use whiteout. Those are unacceptable. There may also be instances where new form will need to be completed, especially if there are any errors in the first section that the employee completed, like maybe it wasn't signed or dated correctly, or the social wasn't correct. those instances, it's really better, and we recommend that a new form just be done. And it can be attached to the initial or the original form. Okay, verify. What is Verify and when do you use it? So E-Verify is a tool used by employers to electronically verify the information that the employee has provided on the I-9 form against the information in the Social Security Administration, as well as the Department of Homeland Security databases. When do you want to use it? Employers are required to use E-Verify for new hires in certain states, Arizona is one, or industries, or as part of their corporate policy. We recommend as part of corporate policy, even if our clients have offices or employees in other states, we still recommend that they follow the E-Verify process. And E-Verify should be used after the employee has completed the I-9 form, but not later than the end of the employee's third day of work for pay. So on day 3, you need to have already completed the Section 2 of the I-9 form, as well as the E-Verify. The E-Verify process is very simple. It's very user-friendly. Step 1 is you do have to be registered with the USCIS, and we have a link as part of this presentation where you can do that. But you can log into the E-Verify system and then enter the required information, employee information, exactly as it appears on the I-9 form: the name, the date of birth, the Social Security number, and the document information. Then you submit the data to E-Verify and wait for the results. If the results come back authorized, that means that the information matches the system, and it will confirm employment authorization. So you're done at this point if you get an authorized result. If it comes back, if the system cannot verify the information, then a TNC, a tentative non-confirmation, will be issued. The employee then must be notified and given the opportunity to resolve the issue with either the Social Security Administration or Department of Homeland Security, depending on where the disconnect is. After that, if the issue is not resolved after the tentative non-confirmation or TNC, then the employee cannot continue working and will need to be terminated. As far as record keeping and compliance, the I-9 form must be kept for the duration of the employee's employment, for 3 years after their employment begins, or 1 year after the employee terminates, whichever is later. And I know that can be kind of confusing, but while the employee is employed, you must have their I-9 form kept. If they do terminate, then the timeline of the 3 years, it's 3 years after their start date or 1 year after they terminate. And then at that point, at either one of those points, their I form could be destroyed and that it be shredded at that point. Ensure the forms are stored securely and are accessible for inspection by authorized officials if anybody, asks or comes knocking on your door. And then I-9 forms must be kept separate from personnel files. So what we recommend is using getting reminders and keeping the I-9 form and the confirmation form from the E-Verify system, keeping those two together and keeping that information in a binder. And then that way, if any government officials come knocking and want to see that information, you're not pulling it out of the employee files, because once they see that, they can then ask for other information. So we want to keep that separate. And we also recommend having an active book of your active employees, and then another method of keeping the terminated employees. We recommend another notebook until the terminated paperwork can be destroyed. That's what we recommend, but whatever works in your situation would probably be the same. And then employers must maintain records of E-Verify queries, including the case number and status, for at least 3 years after the employee's termination or 1 year after a final decision, whichever is later, as we talked about up above. And that's why we recommend, once you have confirmed their employment eligibility, to print off that page and then attach it to the E-Verify or the I-9 form and then keep it together. And it's really important as either the owner or the human resources representative for organizations that you stay up to date on any compliance training that is sent out from E-Verify. The USCIS is very good when they do updates or upgrades to the system. They usually provide a training webinar, and I would encourage is going to be handling this for your organization, that they be participate in those trainings, just so that they can be up to date with the most current information. Because I think we will see probably some changes this year. I'm not sure what they'll look like yet, but I just want to make sure that everybody is up to date, on those. And then also to make sure if there are others in your organization who are responsible for doing the I-9 and the E-Verify for new hires, make sure that they understand the compliance piece of what they're doing, that there are timelines when these documents have to be done. There are certain pieces of documents need to be kept and stored. You just want to make sure that everyone knows what their responsibilities are, so that there aren't any issues coming in the future. Okay, some common pitfalls and best practices. You always want to double check the information. So you want to ensure that all the data entered into the I-9 form and E-Verify system matches exactly. Timeliness. You want to make sure that the forms are verified is used within the required timeframes. And then confidentially, you want to protect sensitive employee data during the verification process. The last thing is it doesn't hurt, and this is another best practice that we recommend, to regularly audit your I-9 forms and E-Verify records to ensure compliance with federal and state laws. And this gives you an opportunity to correct any discrepancies immediately to avoid penalties. But it can be really easy if active employees terminate and you don't take the time at that time to move them from one place to another. By doing audits, then you can catch those and you can move them over. You can also maybe destroy some of your terminated documents that are outside the required timeline to be kept. You can also correct any discrepancies if you notice a transposition of number or dates or anything like that. You have a chance to fix those, and you can fix those usually by just making a memo to that person's I-9 document and then attaching that to that document too. Then that way it's explained that the error was caught, it was corrected, and here's how here's how it was done. All right. Well, LNHR, thanks you very, very much for attending the webinar today. And if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Okay, one of the questions in the chat was, does the IRS accept electronic versions of I-9s for compliance purposes? And the answer to that is yes. The IRS really isn't involved in the I-9 process. It's more Social Security and Department of Homeland Security that are involved in this process. But yes, electronic, you can keep I-9s and E-Verifies electronically on your computer as well. The only reason that we recommend doing it on the paper side is just so in case, you know, ICE or somebody like that walks in, they're not having, they're not looking through your entire computer. They're just looking at the papers that you have on file.
In the Q&A, it says the copies of ID, etc., do they stay with the application or I-9?
Okay, the copies that we referenced earlier about list A, B, or C, we recommend keeping the list A, which would be the passport, the resident card, things of that nature. We do keep a copy of those, the I-9, and the verify confirmation sheet. We would not recommend keeping any of that type of information in the personnel file. So we would not keep it with the application. That's just another way that possibly that information could get out into the masses, and we wouldn't want that to happen. So we recommend that that's the only place. And then as far as information on list B and list C, unless it's required for your industry, we would not recommend keeping that information with the I-9 form. Now, if that has been your practice and you have done that on every single new hire that you've had, you can certainly continue that. But again, from an HR standpoint, we look at that's just another way that that information can, you know, can be hacked or gotten into, and that's not something that you would want to have. The copies of the IDs that I was referring to on list A, those copies should be kept with the I-9 form. For list B, any person completing the I-9 form on the employer side needs to physically review those documents, but they do not need to be kept unless your practice has been keeping that with the I-9 form in the past. It's kind of an either or. Either you keep all of the copies or you don't keep any of the copies other than the list A documentation. So if any of you have questions about this and would like to talk offline about this, please feel free to email. You can email LNHR at hr@lnhrconsulting.com, or you can email me directly at diane@lnhrconsulting.com. So I hope you all have a great day. And again, any questions come up, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.